Meager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the now former chair of the Hardworking Justice Committee, I wanted to focus my contribution today on the process that the committee went through in considering this bill. And as I do so, I would like to acknowledge the work of the clerks.
Hold again. Some of the conversations going on now needs to stop.
I'd like to acknowledge the work of the clerks and the Select Committee Services team on this bill. It was an interesting test case juggling 3 different clerks throughout this process and the number of staff that we had helping us, but at all points they were upfront, they were clear in their work, and they provided consistent advice, sometimes in the face of quite significant and severe personal reflections from members of the committee. So I want to acknowledge the work of the clerks and the team on this bill. Can I also, in doing so, acknowledge the work of the committee and MPs on the committee who generally worked collegially and collectively in this work. And it's helpful, I think, to point to Appendix B in the Select Committee report for the record of decisions made by the committee. And I think the public should look at that appendix and it should analyse it for the consistency and the amount of unanimity that actually existed in the committee. Most of the decisions in the committee, if not all of them, bar a few, were made unanimously on things like the length of submissions, the number of hours of submissions we would hear, how to treat form and template submissions, how we would set criteria for what submissions would be heard. They were all decisions that were agreed to unanimously by the committee, and it showed the collegiality and what can happen when members of the committee work together well. Mr. Speaker, I did want to provide the public some reassurances after the past few weeks and some of the information that's been going around there. I want to reassure the public that every submission that has been made to the committee has been read by someone. It has been read by an official in the ministry, and the themes from those submissions integrated into the departmental report. And I would encourage anyone out there who is interested in this process to read the departmental report. It is rich in information, it is rich in content, and it reflects the incredibly hard work done by the ministry officials in reading over 300,000 submissions and synthesising them into that document. Mr. Speaker, every submission that has been made to the committee has been available to all members of Parliament, not just those on the committee, at all times. I wanted to clear that up. There has been some misinformation out there that members have not had access to those submissions. Again, if you go through the record, you can see that we agreed to the process of accessing submissions from the clerk's team. All members agreed to that, and it is very disappointing to see suggestions that suggest to the otherwise out there. Mr. Speaker, every submission that has been made to the committee that meets the criteria set by the committee will be published and tabled and released publicly for everybody to see, so they can see for themselves the content of those 300,000 submissions. Mr. Speaker, again, the committee has reported the bill back because there is no further work to do. There were some suggestions that this has been outrageously rushed back into the House, but following the end of 80 hours of submissions, over 529 people making oral submissions, at the end, all of the work programme has been completed. The members all agreed unanimously that no changes to the bill needed to be made. They all agreed that the Parliamentary Council Office did not need to draft a revision track version. They all agreed that the report back would come soon. They all had 3 chances to consider the draft Select Committee report, and at the end, every single member on that committee voted for it to be reported back to the House. So that needs to be placed on the record for the reassurances of the public. Mr. Speaker, there is a lot to go through when it comes to considering what we went through on this bill. I wanted to touch on a few things, a few lessons maybe learnt by the Parliament if this was to ever happen again. In early January, the Select Committee was called back somewhat early from some people's holidays to deal with the issue of the parliamentary website crashing. Now, I want to provide some reassurances to the public that at no time has there been any suggestions of foreign interference or scurrilous behaviour in that process. It is simply a matter of what we all did throughout our careers and throughout university and school of leaving it to the last minute and the website not being able to handle the volume that came through on the very last day. That is it. No conspiracies, no interference. That's what happened. Mr. Speaker, I think we learned a lesson there in terms of setting the time for responding to submissions. Generally, submissions are set to be due by 11:59 p.m. at night. That, of course, meant that any issues with the process were unable to be answered by the Select Committee team and by the parliamentary team. So moving forward, I think on bills of significance, we should consider setting those deadlines to be the middle of the day so that people have a chance to deal with any of those issues. Mr. Speaker, questions remain throughout the public about how easy or how hard it was to make a submission. And there were complaints sent through to my email and to our office about the fact that it is a very straightforward process to make a submission. And I think there are questions to the House about whether or not there are restrictions put in place. I actually think it's a good thing that it is as simple as possible for the public to make submissions to the Select Committee. All you need to do is go to the Parliament website, enter your submission, and it is done. Alternatively, write it in and write it in hard copy. There are questions around whether or not you need to provide ID, whether or not you can do them on behalf of other people. And I will put a thought out there in terms of if you are wanting to make a submission to the Parliament as an individual, as an organisation, do that on your own steam. Do not rely on third-party organisations or third-party activists or political parties who go out there and want to collect your data and harvest your data and purport to provide your submission on your behalf. If you want to make a submission to this Parliament, use the process that is made available. It is easy, it is straightforward, it makes the clerk's job incredibly straightforward and easy, and it means we do not run into issues of people having their submissions counted or not counted in terms of them being form submissions. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to touch on the purpose of the Select Committee process, because members today and throughout the process have talked about the numbers and talked about it being a record-breaking achievement. The purpose of the Select Committee process is not a poll, it is not a petition, it is not a referendum, it is not a platform for advocacy. It is a process to allow legislators in this House the opportunity to scrutinise legislation, to offer improvements and to make amendments. That is what it is for. It is not an advocacy platform, it is not a performance piece, and members across the hall can laugh all they want, but if you are a parliamentarian and you are committed to the process of scrutinising legislation put forward by the executive, by the government, you will take that process seriously. It is not a popularity contest, it is not a numbers game, and comments like it is record-breaking are very unhelpful to that process. Mr. Speaker, in the time remaining available, I want to clarify some remaining pieces of misinformation that may be sitting out there in the public, and this is primarily a message for parliamentarians and how they conduct themselves within Select Committees. Partial disclosure of incomplete information which is designed for political gain and results in confusion and anger in the public is deeply unhelpful for our democratic process. We have had to spend a significant amount of time and resource, including in the clerk's office, to deal with that misinformation being spread by members of Parliament deliberately for political purposes. So let me state once and for all, for the record, the appendix in the Select Committee report outlines every decision made by the Select Committee up until the deliberation phase. And there is only one side which has been consistent in our desire to ensure that people have had their say and their voices are heard throughout the entire process. And Tamitha Paul is correct. They did try at every opportunity to stop people from having their say. We voted the bill through to Select Committee as per the coalition agreement. We did not oppose the open discussion. We called for public submissions and allowed the public to have their say. The opposition voted for the bill to be reported back on the same day it was introduced to the Select Committee. We were the ones that called for oral submissions to be held. The opposition called for only written submissions and to prevent every single oral submission from being held. That is part of the record. We were the ones that instructed the Ministry to prepare a departmental report. The opposition voted for no departmental report to be written, therefore no analysis of submissions and no opportunity for members of the public to have their submissions read and synthesised into the report. We were the ones that invited the Minister in charge of the bill to present and make his case to the Select Committee. The opposition opposed that opportunity. And finally, I need to make it clear that the committee unanimously wrote to the Business Committee to seek the agreement to make sure that every single submission was counted while the outstanding ones were processed for consistency with the standing orders, and it is the opposition which opposed that process. Mr Speaker, I have tried my best to set the record straight on some of those issues and to provide some reassurances for the public out there. But I do finish my contribution by extending my gratitude to the hundreds of people who did take the time to present to us in person in Select Committee and who did so with grace, with a sense of measure and with composure, and with a level of respect and manners that I don't think that was always afforded to them by members of our committee. And that is a great shame. And for those individuals who were treated disrespectfully by members of Parliament when they gave their submission, I want to apologise to them. I want to thank all of those who sent kind words to the committee for the hard work undertaken in terms of considering this bill, whether or not they supported it or not. I'm glad that we are bringing this piece of legislation to a conclusion this afternoon. I'm glad that we can look forward to the task of rebuilding our economy and building a brighter, more prosperous future for all New Zealanders. Mr Speaker, the members opposite may laugh, but that is what we are focused on here. In saying that, we do not support this bill passing, and I'll conclude my contribution by saying we do not commend this bill to the House.
Okay, so that was just, I don't know, 10 minutes of him complaining about the committee.
Well, he did make one attack at Hobson's Pledge with their template, submissions, and I mean, and the ACT Party's template submissions, which ironically, the two highest templates submissions were for the bill.
Yeah, so I just want to address the point that James made. It's like, oh, well, the opposition, they didn't want oral submissions, actually. No, I actually went through the final report. And I put it in the link so everyone, put it in the chat so everyone can read it. But there were over 20 issues that were brought up by the Greens, Labour, and Te Pāti Māori about the submission process. It's like, oh, do we want really racist submissions where I don't know and you know I'm going to get clip chipped and people are going to freak out. But do we really want submissions that contain the word nigger in it?
Yeah.
I'm cancelled now. I cancelled myself. But there we go. You know, it's things like that. That's the reason why Duncan Webb was like, you know, maybe we ought to, you know, go through these issues first before we accept oral submissions.
Yeah, and actually find out, like, because some of them were absolute idiots. I will be honest, as we did marathons, as we went along, they became more and more pleasant. And I'd probably say the later submissions were actually probably a lot more thoroughly scrutinised, or they were a lot more educated. But the earlier submissions, there were so many ignorant ones there. And, I mean, Dakota upset some of them. No surprises there. I mean, he would have upset them anyway.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think, and when you're listening to him, he's basically saying calm down. Like, he's basically saying that he liked the people who were saying yes please and nodding up and down master and people who had grace and poise. So you're saying that you don't like people to have passion or people to be upset that you're doing something to them. You like them to calm down and be upset quietly. Is that what you like? So, yeah, to me, again, really narcissistic kind of traits, but he's...
Well, to be honest, he's one of the better Select Committee chairs that's in this current Parliament.
Oh, yeah. From what I saw, he did a good job. It's a shame he wasn't eager to go the distance, but, you know, sometimes James Meager is not always eager. Well, but
put it this way, he's a hell of a lot better Select Committee chair than Sam Uffendale.
Oh, Bedleg, yeah. He's a lot better than Bedleg.
Yeah.
But again, the accessibility... That is just a number one rule for that. And this year we've seen attacks on disability as people as liability country. We've seen with the LGBT community, nobody stomping down on the church for doing what they were doing, but we're taking patch members' vests and stuff, but not these people who are intentionally harassing, assaulting and abusing people in the LGBT community. And we're also going for Māori. I mean, these are all the groups that they've been actually actively attacking this whole year, and nothing's been done.
And look, James was right to bring up, hey, the people that are opposite to me didn't want to go through with oral submissions. He that is a problem. I for one, I think the oral submission process was very, very important, and it's not because we make a shit ton of content out of it. It's because it's actually important for democracy. So I actually do agree with that. But you can't have people running in saying all sorts of slurs and swear words and stupid shit live.
But that's natural human being behavior, though. It's not natural to look at a refill and look down at your paper the whole time and not even speak to people. It's not natural not to be out in the community at rugby games like the Greens Party has been, and Te Pāti Māori as well. It's not natural for the leader of this country and the other second one in charge not to be there for this reading in Parliament. These are not natural things.
I mean, it was purposely put on a Thursday. I can tell you that. It was purposely put on a Thursday.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.